Welcome everyone who's here. This is it's really gotten to be the highlight of my week for sure. We're getting started. For those of you who are new to this session, my name is Red Wing Kesar. I'm a nurse and a writer trying to be a poet as I grow up. I work at the MERI Center for Palliative Care Education at UCSF, and I just feel so honored that I get to include poetry as part of palliative care and as part of the work that I do. It's one of the things that makes me happiest in my life. And so usually the way this session works is that I read a couple of poems, we respond to poems by just sort of noticing as I read if there's a word or a line that really resonates for you. You might want to jot it down. And then we do some prompts and we do some short bits of writing together. And I have to say, each week it's been just so incredible what people are able to allow to come through them in just a few minutes. And we share things with each other, and it's just been a wonderful process. So thank you all for joining today. I'm going to start with a poem by David White called The Lightest Touch. Good poetry begins with the lightest touch, a breeze arriving from nowhere, a whispered healing arrival, a word in your ear, a settling into things. Then, like a hand in the dark, it arrests the whole body, stealing you for revelation. In the silence that follows a great line, in the silence that follows a great line, you can feel Lazarus deep inside, even the laziest, most deathly afraid part of you lift up his hands and walk toward the light. So what we typically do first is just go around and say our names and where we are sitting physically. And this morning, maybe just either one word or an image or a color that just describes how you're feeling this morning. My word for today is creativity. Excited about that these days. So, again, for those of you who haven't joined regularly, partly we do this because poem making can be just a helpful tool. It sometimes really surprises us. It allows us to express things that we maybe didn't even know we really needed to express, and it just comes out and it happens. That it sometimes using metaphors to describe something that's going on for us makes us see things differently. I know that for me, especially this week, it seems like I'm dealing with a lot of the darkness and the hard parts of what's going on in my dream space. And so I wake up just like, oh my gosh, and using just a few words and just writing, just kind of automatic writing poetry is really helping me kind of interpret some of that and settle with it. So we never quite know where poetry is going to take us, but I'm just thrilled that everyone who is showing up at this class is allowing this to happen. I mean, there have been a number of weeks when people have said, I've never really written poems before, and then they write 3 lines that are so beautiful. So this is another poem about poems. Let me find the last page. I just lost the oh, there we go. Okay. So this poem is called Living Things by Anne Porter. And I just invite you to listen again for a word or a line that really resonates with you. or that you might be curious about, or that stands out? Oh. So I'm about to read a poem called Living Things, and just ask everyone to just listen for a word or a line that might resonate for them. Living Things. Our poems are like the warthogs in the zoo. It's hard to say why there should be such creatures. But once our life gets into them, as sometimes happens, our poems turn into living things. And there's no arguing with living things. They are the way they are. Our poems may be rough or delicate, little or great, but always they have inside them a confluence of cries and secret languages. And always they are improvident and free. They keep a kind of Sabbath. They play on sooty fire escapes and window ledges. They wander in and out of jails and gardens. They sparkle in the deep mines. They sing in breaking waves and rock like wooden cradles. So I'm wondering if there's a word or a line that just jumps out at you from that poem. And if you don't have a lot of background noise where you are, it's okay to stay off mute. But if you do, then stay on mute until you speak, please.
Hi, I really like they wander in and out of jails and gardens.
I love the word improvident.
I like the word rock, that part at the end.
Rock like wooden cradles, yeah.
Confluence of cries.
I like, it's hard to say why there should be such creatures.
Yeah.
I like how it says, how it says, they turn into living things and there's no arguing with living things. They are the way they are.
Yeah, I'd choose that one too.
I just like the warthog idea, this thing that like doesn't belong, but kind of does also, and the ugliness of it. But like it's still a little pig.
Yeah.
I like secret languages.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
So I want to ask you to use either the line that resonated the most for you as a prompt, or else poems are like ... or as sometimes happens ... Whichever idea resonates for you as a prompt. We'll once again just do a 3-minute write, and just don't think about it too much. Just let yourself start writing. So we're always aware that 3 minutes is a pretty short time, but again, it's always amazing what comes through in a short time. And certainly you're invited that if some lines come up for you during these short writes, or ideas or concepts, feel free to explore them later today, or as time goes on. Sometimes, you know, some little snippet will come through that you're like, oh yeah, I want to follow that thread. So I'm wondering if anyone is here to share what just came through them. I'm going to read another poem about poems called Words So Large by Susan Windle, who I was thrilled to find this poem and then went on her website, and she's got all these amazing poems. So Susan Windle, Words So Large. There are words so large, you can live in them. Isn't it a comfort to know that your fear is not the biggest thing? Always, always, if you listen, a sound will form around your fragile life. You can move and breathe within the dark, expansive walls of this world, of this word. You can feed on the juice of its sound. There are words so large you can live in them. Isn't it a comfort to know your fear is not the biggest thing? Always, always, if you listen, a sound will form around your fragile life. You can move and breathe within the dark, expansive walls of this word. You can feed on the juice of its sound. What resonates or are you curious about in those words?
I
Well,
like
go ahead, Sylvia.
I like the part where you read can live in it.
Yeah, I really relate strongly right now to reading as a way of letting my fear not be the biggest thing. And my writing being a way of not letting my fear be the biggest thing right now. Like very specifically, that resonates with me this week.
Yeah, me too.
You can feed on the juice of its sounds. I'm curious about that.
Uh-huh. Say more, Anne.
Well, juice to me has many different flavors, and some is bitter, some might be bitter or sour, some might be. I'm with two grandchildren who like to make lemonade, and so juice is really has many different sides to it.
Thank you.
I don't have a fully formed thought, but just the relationship between fear and a lack of listening. And maybe if we listened more to what was true, we wouldn't be so afraid.
And if the listening comes from within instead of many things I get on the internet that really keeps my fear stirred up.
That reminds me of the line, a sound will form around your fragile life.
Mm.
So the prompt I'll suggest this time from this poem is either, isn't it a comfort to know, ... or if you listen, ... And again, or if there's another word or line that you want to use as your prompt, go ahead and do that. And we'll write for another few minutes.
What was the second one, Red Wing? Sorry. Isn't
If,
it a comfort to
if
know?
you listen. have to say, I am always surprised when I let myself just let it come out. So I'd love to hear what someone has let come through. I'll read you what I wrote for this right. Isn't it a comfort to know there is something else, something greater than the front page of the New York Times, something truer than Twitter, something deeper than even the ocean, where we have all encountered depth and fear before. I am comforted by the concept of this great ball of fire, earth, and water spinning and floating in air and space, and my small life simply a moment in the long, long story of time.
A moment in the long, long story of time.
Mm-hmm.
And the planet floating and spinning, those two different states, floating and spinning.
Just the simple phrase, something else, struck me as very powerful and full.
Mm-hmm.
Redwing, you in the sea, did you say depth and fear or death and fear?
I said depth.
It was
Oh, I was wondering.
it
Yeah.
was kind of a both and that
Yes,
was really
yeah.
hear those two things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
And then the four elements, the planet of water and fire and earth held by air.
Yeah.
Yeah. This medicine, big medicine.
I like it.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest that whatever the word or image was that you started with this morning when we did introductions, to use that as a prompt. And if that word or image isn't still holding for you 45 minutes later, pick a different one. So some word or image that is feeling potent for you or how you're feeling right now, and just use that to take off. So what have you come up with this time? So there was a quote that I sent you in the packet from Christian Winman that says, "Let us remember that in the end, we go to poetry for one reason, so that we might more fully inhabit our lives and the world in which we live them. And that if we more fully inhabit these things, we might be less apt to destroy both."
Mm.
And the other poem I want to leave you with is a poem from the very first session by Charles Olson called "These Days." Whatever you have to say, leave the roots on. Let them dangle and the dirt, just to make clear where they come from.
Mm.
Whatever you have to say, leave the roots on. Let them dangle and the dirt, just to make clear where they come from. Please continue to say whatever you have to say to yourself, to people around you, in the work that we do. This is the time when we get to make clear where things come from in ourselves, for each other, for this world. Thank you so much once again for just showing up for this hour of this week. And I certainly hope I will see many of you again in this crazy and wild format. Certainly, as always, if something comes out of something you wrote today that you feel comfortable sharing in a bigger reality, please send it to us. Gail is keeping a file of poems that come out of this class, and some of them have already been printed in the MERI Center newsletter. So feel free, and may you all stay safe, stay healthy, have a good weekend, and I hope to see you again soon. Blessings.